This is The Issue, and I am the Ghetto Man. Today's issue, the Eighth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states as follows. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Now, as I've said in previous videos, when the United States Constitution was first ratified by the states, it didn't contain a Bill of Rights. And therefore, it didn't contain any prohibition against cruel or unusual punishments either. These protections weren't added to the United States Constitution until after it was ratified. Now, the Eighth Amendment was introduced by James Madison as part of the Bill of Rights into the U.S. Constitution on September 5th, 1789, and was voted for by 9 out of 12 states on December 15th, 1791. Now, there are 3 parts to the Eighth Amendment. 1, excessive bail shall not be required. 2, nor excessive fines imposed. And finally, 3, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. 1, excessive bail shall not be required. You see, the Eighth Amendment prohibits the courts from assigning, that is, charging a person accused of a crime with a large and excessive amount of money for bail. So you see, a person arrested for a crime is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. Well, the Eighth Amendment protects that person from an overzealous judge that would attempt to impose punishment prior to trial and prior to a conviction by denying that person their freedom, their liberty, by imposing excessive bail, forcing the accused to remain in custody, punishing that person until the completion of their trial, whether they are found guilty or not. You see, it would be a cruel punishment indeed for an innocent person to serve time in jail prior to trial for a crime that he or she had not committed and was later found innocent of. So, what is bail anyway? Bail is property or money that is given to the court as a promise or guarantee that the accused will show up for his or her trial. If the accused fails to show up for trial, the bail money or property posted is forfeited and a warrant will be issued for the accused's arrest. Now, the amount of bail assigned to the accused will depend on the type of crime that they're charged with. If the alleged crime is a serious one, like murder, as an example, the bail will be much higher than that of a lesser crime like shoplifting, where bail will be considerably less or no bail at all, which is called being released on one's own recognizance. In other words, the higher the flight risk, the higher the bail is going to be. 2, nor excessive fines imposed. You see, the Eighth Amendment prohibits the federal government from imposing unduly harsh penalties on a person convicted of a crime. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that it is unconstitutional to excessively fine an individual based on their economic or financial standing. It would be absurd to fine someone $10,000 for stealing a loaf of bread, as an example. In other words, monetary punishments must fit the crime. 3, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Well, what is a cruel and unusual punishment? You know, it's really hard to define. In fact, in my opinion, it's one of those things in life that when you see it, you instantly know what it is. Cutting off a person's hand for stealing would be an example of a cruel and unusual punishment. Being strangled, branded, burned, locked in stocks, or any other barbaric form of torture are all primary examples of a cruel and unusual punishment. Well, the Eighth Amendment works to prevent this type of punishment from ever taking place in our country. In 1689, and this is a full century before the ratification of the United States Constitution, England adopted a Bill of Rights that prohibited cruel and unusual punishments. In 1776, George Mason included a prohibition of cruel and unusual punishments in the Declaration of Rights that he drafted for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Our fathers were no strangers to cruel and unusual punishment. They had to deal with the King of England, remember? So they had already been down this road before, and they weren't going to go down it again. Abraham Holmes, a pastor who served for over 30 years at a church in Marshville, Missouri, was greatly concerned about this. That without a restraint on Congress, laws might be passed that would repeat the abuses of, quote, that diabolical institution, the Inquisition, unquote, and start torturing persons convicted of federal crimes. And this is what he said, quote, they are nowhere restrained from inventing the most cruel and unheard of punishments and annexing them to crimes, and there is no constitutional check on them, but the racks and gibbets may be amongst the most mild instruments of their discipline. Abraham Holmes. The rack is a torture device consisting of a rectangular, usually a wooden frame, slightly raised from the ground, with a roller on both ends. The victim's ankles are then fastened to one roller, and the wrists are changed to the other. The victim's body is then stretched to the breaking point, causing excruciating pain, pulling your joints apart, and death. This device was used to torture, punish, and extract confessions. A gibbet is a gallows-type structure from which the dead or dying bodies of criminals were hung on public display. This was done to deter other existing or potential criminals in the area. Patrick Henry, one of our nation's founders, was also concerned about the lack of prohibition against cruel and unusual punishments in the Constitution. He felt that without it, Congress could and would pass laws that would incorporate cruel and unusual punishments as a tool of oppression against the people. And this is what he said. Congress may introduce the practice of France, Spain, and Germany of torturing to extort a confession of the crime. They will tell you that there is such a necessity of strengthening the arm of government that they must extort confessions by torture in order to punish with still more relentless severity. We are then lost and undone. Inflicting any type of cruel and unusual punishment is a slippery slope that we as a nation do not want to go down. What about the states? Does the Eighth Amendment affect the states? Yes, it does. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution makes the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, applicable upon the states. The 14th Amendment prohibits the states from abridging, quote, the privilege or immunities of citizens of the United States, unquote, and from depriving, quote, any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Today, our government has done an about-face on this practice. In spite of the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment, our government has been engaged in a scheme that punishes, tortures, and extracts compelled confessions from suspected criminals, and they've been doing it for many, many years now. It's called waterboarding. The government calls it enhanced interrogation. Well, whatever you want to call it, it's being used by the federal government on alleged terrorists that are being held on a military base located at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Now remember, these people have not been charged or convicted of a crime. They've never had their day in court. Now, waterboarding simulates the effect of drowning and suffocation and can result in death. It has never been proven to be an effective method to extract reliable information or a true confession out of anyone. Its only purpose is to terrorize and harshly punish its victim. It's torture. It is cruel and unusual punishment. Now, when I was in the Navy, I was waterboarded as part of our survival training. And I can assure you, from firsthand experience, waterboarding is torture. Now, I brought this up because waterboarding is a prime example as to why our founding fathers drafted the Eighth Amendment in the first place. What's next? Are we going to bring back the rack? How about thumb screws and gibbets? Are we going to start burning people alive at the stake again? How about impalement or crucifixion? Drawing and quartering or disemboweling people as punishment for their crimes? Where does it stop? As a nation, we cannot go down this road. The cruel and unusual punishment clause of the Eighth Amendment, without question, prohibits any inhumane method of punishment within the jurisdiction of the United States. The Eighth Amendment is what separates us as a nation, as a civilized nation, from the barbaric practices of torture still found in many parts of the world today. I am the Ghetto Man. Thank you for watching. If you are politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. Please subscribe to my BitChute channel, and please share.